Hey, hope you're having a great day. So in this video, the title suggests me looking into the comments that John made in 1 John chapter 5, verse 1. And so as you can see here on the screen, there is a PDF that's accessible. To go to the description below, there should be a link where it opened up off the Google Drive. There would be no need to download this particular PDF. There's no layers or anything like that. So just open off the Google Drive. But anyway, so the left column here, part one, and the right column here, part two. So we'll just go ahead and get started and see what this gentleman had to say. There might be some advertisements. Just ignore those. So
the meaning of each passage in this short book. When Calvinists approach the scripture, they have doctrines in mind.
If you're a Colorado homeowner that pays more than $97 per month for electricity, you may qualify to go
And then they search the scriptures for proof texts of those doctrines. They don't even realize it, but they read their ideas into the text and use them as if others do the same, all the while ignoring the context. So when they quote their verses or when they cite the reference, they think that you see it the way they do. Now, the doctrine that they're reading into 1 John 5:1 is the idea that regeneration precedes faith. They believe a person is born again and regenerated before they believe in Christ. Here's what the verse actually says. In 1 John 5:1, it says, "Whosoever believeth that Jesus is the Christ is born of God. And everyone that loveth him that begat, loveth him also that is begotten of him." But here's what the Calvinist sees when they look at 1 John 5:1, and here's what they think you see when they cite this verse. What they see is, whosoever believeth that Jesus is the Christ was previously born of God prior to believing. And everyone that loveth him that begat, loveth him also that is begotten of him. Now, if we wanted to make this verse about the salvation process, we could just as easily leave it like it is and just add the word "then" before the phrase "born of God." So it would say, "Whosoever believeth that Jesus is the Christ is then born of God." So it's clear to see that the verse is actually quite neutral on the matter. And when it comes to altering the verse to match a belief, it's a lot closer to the biblical method of salvation than it is to the Gnostic method of salvation.
alrighty, so when I look at this, I see these two are saying the same thing. Okay, and he wanted to add the word "then," which changed the order a little bit. Salvation works both ways. Okay, can a person believe based on flesh and blood and then become born of God? Yeah, absolutely. But all John trying to say here is, whosoever believeth that Jesus is the Christ is born of God. So that belief there, what occurred as a result of being born of God. Okay, and this here, it's just more verbiage saying the same thing as this. There's no need for any of this. Okay, this here, let me just point out just what was meant.
Salvation. The problem with both.
Okay, let me just open up the order of salvation chart. This is a chart that I put together using the inductive method. So basically, it goes order from left to right. Okay, so you have this rectangle here, this green rectangle. This is the redemptive work of Christ. Alrighty. So in the beginning, you have the gospel, and then you have faith, and then you have the redemptive work, and then you believe. Okay, so they're believe based on flesh and blood that you see here, and they believe as a result of the interchange that took place. Okay, so all John is saying here is that, if you look here, whosoever believeth that Jesus is the Christ is born of God. Okay, that's in here. Okay, born of God. Okay, and everyone that loveth him that begot loveth him also that is begotten of him. Okay, so that's all John is saying, and it's so important because all three epistles, that's the foundation. These are the people that are believing based on the redemptive work. They're not believing based on flesh and blood. So Simon is an example in Acts chapter 8 of somebody who just believed in flesh and blood, but they never experienced this. He even went so far as to get baptized, okay, in this column here, okay, but he never experienced any of this. So that's in Acts chapter 8. So that's this passage right here, okay. So let's take a look at, let's again, okay, Jesus is the Christ, okay? Who believes Jesus Christ, born of God? So let's go back to here. Let's take a look at what happened with Peter. Now, John was here when it took place, okay? And basically, it's Matthew chapter 16, 13 to 19. And Jesus asked them, who do they say I am? Okay, now this here is based on flesh and blood, okay? And this here, that Jesus is the Christ, Son of the living God, okay? And Jesus answered them, flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, okay? But my Father which is in heaven, okay? So go back to this here. Flesh and blood did not reveal this to you in red, but my Father in heaven, which is in green, okay? And that's the belief that John's talking about. Not belief based in flesh and blood, but belief over here. That's all that's happening, okay? So again, John was there when this happened, and he's just sharing, he's taking that experience. This is how you know that um, whether they're born of God or not. Okay, and the idea of believing here. Okay, let's go back to here. The idea of believing here, they're going to bear fruit, reflecting their understanding of this. Okay, remember Jesus said, "Do not choose me, but I chose you, so that you go and bear fruit." Okay, so so they were chosen, and then to go and bear fruit. So that's what this all entails. Okay, hope that makes sense. Anyway, so then you go to Romans 10, 10, 11. For with the heart man believe unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession made unto salvation. Okay, that's what's going on here. Again, go back to the chart. It's out of the heart right here. It's at Romans 10. All right, it's out of the heart here. Alrighty. So you're, and by the way, this chart is everything by layers, they're controlled by layers. So if you were to download it, you'd be able to control the layers. Right now, I don't have it downloaded at the moment. I can't control layers, but if I have to download it and use Adobe Acrobat, I should be able to control the layers. Then there should be in the left side, there will be like three squares on top of each other. That's your layer dialog box. There you can control the layers. So I recommend you turn off all the layers and then turn on layer one, which is gospel, and then layer two, which is faith, and just analyze it. And it just really helps. I found it to be very helpful. So, alrighty. So, and then that leads to Ephesians 1:19. Okay, it's the power to us, word who believe. This is writing to the church of Ephesus. Okay, the believers, and according to working of His mighty power. Okay, reverting back to the previous verse, we talk about God's inheritance of the saints. Okay, so it's according to His mighty power that one believes. Okay, and how so? Go to Deuteronomy 36. Okay, he circumcised the heart. Okay, that's in accordance to his power. We cannot circumcise our own hearts. Paul talked about circumcision made without hands. Okay, that the circumcision done in the old covenant, where on the eighth day you're circumcised, that was a sign of the covenant they were in. They did not enter in the covenant, it was a sign of the covenant they were in. Okay, and it's a foreshadow of the circumcision of the heart. By cutting off the foreskin and flesh, it reflects that experience in circling the heart where you just had no desire for the flesh. Okay, when you experience that initial point of salvation. Okay, so then that results in living stones. Okay, so here you also living stones are being built up spiritual house, holy priesthood. Okay, okay, and continuing on, it results in bearing fruit. Okay, so John chapter 15 is where John, the chapter that John borrowed, I think, from the most, in his three epistles, first, second, and third John, he borrowed a lot from the chapter. So I point that out. So then go into believe, the, the Greek, and trust, especially one spiritual well-being to Christ. So it has to do with trusting. You have that experience, and it just naturally trust in Christ. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And then going back to Jesus the Messiah, Jesus the Christ, that confession that Peter made. Okay, that anointed one. So you get that sense and you experience that. He's the anointed one. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense. Now we go into what he had to say about when it was written. All right, see what it says.
Manichaeism was a Christian form of Gnosticism in that it attempts to incorporate Jesus of Nazareth.
Scientists discovered some people have a secret pooping habit that keeps them effortlessly thin.
As a key religious figure. While the book of 1 John was written around or before AD 90, Arius and Manes didn't come around till later. Gnosticism was still prevalent. Gnosticism predates Manes and predates Christianity.
Alrighty, so here he's applying it to the 90s. He believed that was written in the 90s, and a lot of people believe that. So as you can see, he's applying it to these things that were in that era. Okay, I take a very different position. I don't believe they're written in the 90s, and I'll share with you why. Hopefully, it'll all make sense. So there's some links here, draw here. Like, here's a link where it goes over, um, where it goes over Gospel of John and Revelation. I think this is incorrect. Okay, I believe it was written around 66 AD. There's a book written by the name of Dr. Kenneth Gentry called "Before Jerusalem Fell: The Dating Book of Revelation," and it gives you the whole 9 yards of both sides, early date versus late date. And I strongly recommend looking at that. But here I agree with them. What the heck? Okay, let's stick to the topic here. All right, so because the word dating there, it's getting the idea that I want to date. Okay. Anyway, um, so yeah, so it's around 65 AD, and I believe that is accurate. It's 65 AD. It fits the timing, fits with the time indicators of First John, and it fits with what's going on. Okay, we've not written 90s, so see timing events. Okay, so it talks about um, the destruction of the temple. So John, First John, Second and Third John, we're uh, let's you're welcome to look into that. But basically, um, okay, I'm kind of going ahead of myself here. Okay, so basically, those are some of the things that were going on at that time, the 60s. Okay, and then you see in the Book of Revelation, they were at the time it was written, they were in tribulation at the time. Okay, which puts it around 66 AD. Okay, they measured a temple. Okay, as you saw earlier in that date site, dating of the books, um, they figured probably 70 AD, whatever. But you're not going to be measuring the temple of God when you got these large hailstones, or not hailstones, but wave a stone to wave a town. It's 100 pounds being launched at you. Okay, it had been doing done when it was safe. So um, they were in tribulation. Okay, so Jews were both there in 66 AD. It still had to be safe enough where they can measure the temple, and so that fits 66 AD. Okay, hope that makes sense. So that had to do with the dating book of Revelation. But so basically, first, second, third John written 65 AD and Revelation 66 AD. So keep that in mind. Okay, so and then there's this Antichrist video I strongly encourage you to watch where there's a bit of dating there as well. But let's go look at the Antichrist chart. So as you can see here, there's four verses of Antichrist. And basically, your time indicated here, like last time, which indicates very short amount of time here. We're not talking thousands of years, okay? And I did the inductive method where I took where it's a deceiver of the passages where we talk about Antichrist, and I found talk about deceiving in Matthew 24, deceive in Second Timothy. I looked at date in Second Timothy is 63 A.D. Referred to as the last days. He was the same thing, which is written around 66 AD. So I encourage you to look at this at the timing of all this, and it'll make more sense. Okay, so raise the question: is the when it comes to Antichrist, this verse is so commonly ignored. 1 John 2:18. How do they know just because there are many Antichrist that was the last time? And so if we go to Matthew 24 chart, now this the part one just basically tried to help you understand what the disciples mean by what they were talking about. Okay, because a lot of Christians substitute what they don't know, which is this part here, with what they do know, and it just caused a lot of confusion. Hopefully, this will clear things up. Just go to part two, and for what happened. Okay, so basically this is 31 AD here, alrighty. And I used to think it was 30 AD when the cross took place, but I realized that it's actually 31 AD. My Daniel 70 weeks chart goes over that exactly how there's some verses where it pinpoints you exactly when it took place, the reign of Tiberius, um, and there's some other factors as well. But anyway, so this generation goes get that from Psalm, the 40 years. So all things will take place. Now, um, First John written around 65 AD. Okay, the last hour. Okay, the gospel is fully preached out the whole ecumene, which is Greek for inhabited earth. And if we go to Luke 2:1, there's a census that took place to give an idea what the parameters were of inhabited earth. If you go do a Google search, census, Roman Empire, you will see how that the result of that census. Okay, how big, how far out the gospel had to go to, and it reached out the entire Oikomene Roman Empire. Okay, so the gospel had been fully preached at that point. Okay, so from that point forward, the branches that were broken off, the Jews, their hearts were hardening. By the time the destruction of the temple took place, they were very wicked and evil, as described in Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. They were referred to as the synagogue of Satan. And where it says they claimed they were Jews, but were not. He's speaking outwardly versus inwardly. Okay. So outwardly, fleshly, they were Jews, but inwardly they were not. So Romans chapter 2, verse 29, um, where Jews wanted inwardly. Okay. And so that's hopefully that gives you that idea of a picture. The early Jews who denied Christ coming in the flesh, so you have the separation of sheep and goats going on here. That's led to the destruction of the temple. So you had the goats, if you will, the Antichrist. They were seducing the Jews that had been converted. You know, hey, come with us. Don't go fleeing the mountains like um, Jesus said. So to the believer, uh, took what Jesus said, fleeing the mountains, and they believed that when they saw the signs, get the heck out of there, flee the mountains. So they fled to Perea, then Pella. Okay, whereas the Jews, the fleshly Jews who denied Christ, the real Messiah, they were thinking that their Messiah, which is the false Messiah, was going to rapture them out of the temple, okay, and save them. So they were seducing them, trying to bring them over. Okay, so there's more on that in the Antichrist video in the link, but hopefully that gives you the picture of what's going on. So that hopefully that explains to you um, why they just because there are many antichrists that they knew it was the last time. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you why that would take place. Again, the gospel fully preached, and this point by the time this was written, they um, they knew who the Antichrist was going to be, and they knew time was running out. Okay, the last time or last hour. Okay, and just again, this is written around 65 A.D. The Jews revolt started in 66 A.D. Okay, a year later. Now you might say, well, gee, 1 year is a long time compared to last hour or last time. You got to look at it from their perspective, their history. This was huge. You're talking the end of an entire Old Covenant order. Okay, it was wrapping up. Okay, hope that makes sense. So, yeah, so I already went over several leads. Yeah, and a lot of Christians today, they still think that the natural seed are counted. They're missing that. Um, yeah, so and and since the word last hour is used, it's not part of the eternal covenant. Okay, we have to understand that the old covenant becoming obsolete is the wrapping up at the end of the ages. Okay, and uh, and so it's not a part of the eternal covenant. When you have a tight parameter like that, time, you don't go and include it into the eternal covenant. This is something that's going to go on forever. Okay. But a lot of Christians do that, unfortunately. And so these are just things for you to go over. Um, yeah, we already looked at the end of Matthew 24 chart and then Daniel 70 week chart. I encourage you to look at as well. Okay. All right. So let's look at the next thing this gentleman had to say.
Just give them labels like stay away from XYZ denomination. He has to identify them.
איך זה שעם שלם הולך אחרי הוראת שקר.
האם מנסים להסתיר מאיתנו?
By claim and practice. So these are people claiming to be Christians like them, but they believe or practice something that isn't true. Now look carefully at how John words this. In 1 John 1:6, if we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and do not the truth. What we can infer from that, based on the seducers, is that somebody is saying that they have fellowship with God.
Okay. So I want to point out here denomination. Like stay away from XYZ denomination. At the time, even
But they're walking in.
Even if you believe that is written in the 90s, there were no denominations at that time. Okay. Denomination did not start until 380 AD. Okay, so he misapplying several times he misapplied, but this article here, hopefully you will see, understand when it actually started, 380 AD. Boy, I am just getting riddled with advertisements. I apologize. Wow. Okay, there we go. All right, so yeah, so 380 AD. Okay, and it was the Roman Catholic Church. Before that, there were no denominations. Okay, I know a lot of Roman Catholics deny that, but that's based on rewritten history, if you will. But that's when it became official. So what he's saying there about denomination, it's not true. So, all right. So then I'll wrap it up. So let's zoom in a little bit here. Did you know the word gospel is never used in any John epistles? Okay, because like I'm telling you, the written shortly after the gospel had been fully preached throughout the Roman Empire. Every Jew heard it before the temple was destroyed. There's need to be sure the branches that were broken off, Roman 11, were of those who were not of a sheep nor lost sheep of Israel. This is why they needed to know who the Antichrist were at the time, who are going to part ways with. This is why some were seduced to take some of the temple instead of going to the mountain that was preached due to what Jesus said in Mount Olives. On Mount Olives. The Antichrist, those who denied Jesus came in the flesh, were either destroyed with the temple or taken captive by Caesar, who built the Colosseum every day. Remember, they cried out, "We have no king, or we have no king but Caesar." Okay, so God handed those over, about 95,000. Okay, this was an issue with the sheep versus goat being separated. The sheep who believed their Christ fled the mountain that Jesus instructed them to. Matthew 24:16-20. They fled to Perea, then parallel to escape to horrific tribulation, destruction of the temple. And this is documented by Josephus and Tiberius. Okay, and the Jews who were destroyed the temple thought their Messiah was going to ration them up. This is a lie by the false prophets today, so they died. So that wraps up part one. Hopefully this all makes sense. Um, and hopefully you can see why I believe it's written around 65 AD. It fits. I believe all the New Testament books were written before Nero had died. He died June 8, 68 AD, just before the destruction of the temple. Remember, God entrusted the Jews the oracle of Romans 3:2. And so it makes sense that it fits what was going on with the Jews at the time. Yes, John's a Jew. He lived in the 90s, but there's no reason for him to write in the 90s. And the gentleman, you go through, continue watching his video, he's misapplying it. I believe misapplying it. But that's not to say that there's some golden nuggets that he might share, think that we can apply, definitely for sure. But if it's true that it applied in 90, John would have said something about sharing the gospel, to the people that need it. But it's completely different. The difference between the 60s, the first century, and the 90s, the first century, it's huge. Okay, what's going on? 60s had to do with the destruction of the temple. The 90s did not. Okay, so anyway, that wraps it up, and then there'll be a part two, and that'll be it for this particular series. So, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.